So today's webinar is about using formative assessment data to inform instruction in real time. And we're thrilled to have Caitlin Scanlon, a mathematics coach at Rafael Hernandez School for Performing Arts in Newark with us to be presenting this webinar. As you can see, she's been a teacher for 14 years and will soon have a Master's of Arts in Educational Leadership. So this came about because we've done a lot of work with Rafael Hernandez, who's been using Edulastic, and Caitlin and her team have come up with some terrific ways to look at the data and adapt their instruction. So we wanted to share that with other educators. All right, Caitlin, do you want to tell us a little bit about Rafael Hernandez, and we'll get started.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and thank you, Leslie, for the introduction. So Rafael Hernandez is here in Newark, New Jersey. We have 707 students from pre-K through 8th grade. Most of our population is Hispanic, and we have African-American students and white students as well. We have an award-winning art program, and we have technology classes for all grades. So that's a makeup of our school. So now that you have an idea of what Rafael Hernandez looks like, and I wanted to give you an idea as to the structure of our mathematics classes. So our math classes are comprised of 2 50-minute blocks. So we most often have back-to-back blocks that are 100 minutes. Our first block begins with an opener such as a do now or a mental math, train, or number talk. And we ask our students to discover our mathematics. Excuse me, I'm in the school right now. In my school right now, speaking of Rafael Hernandez. So excuse me, just one moment, please.
To help raise money for uniforms and pom-poms. Please come and support our great team. Also, cheerleaders, there will be a brief meeting after school tomorrow, April 14th. Ms. Shear's room, 111. Have a great night, ladies and gentlemen.
I apologize. So we have hands-on investigation. So the way we ask our students to learn the math is we use a lot of, this is a pre-K through 8th grade. I'm seeing a couple of questions come in. So this is a pre-K through 8th grade. This is not a high school. But this type of, Edulastic is used in our high schools as well. So our classes have many hands-on investigations in which we ask students to discover the math. We use a universal design for learning so that all of our students, our kinesthetic, our auditory, our visual learners all have a deep understanding by really experiencing the math. And that's our whole group instruction. In the second block we have, which is where we get a lot of our data from, is our workstations. We have teacher-led stations. We also have independent stations as well. So that's how our mathematics classes look. Next slide, please. The structure of our literacy classes, our ELA classes for pre-K to 2 is similar to our 3 to 8, which is essentially our whole group instruction where they're learning. The major difference is just the time. There's a little bit more time for pre-K through 2. We have our whole group instruction where there's listening, learning, and then we have our small groups, which is similar to our math. We have our teacher-led groups and we have our workstations. And then the closure is another whole group where students share out. And for the next 2 slides, Leslie, you'll see that the structure is very uniform from our pre-K through 8th grades overall, except with certain details, whole group, small group, whole group. So that's what our classes look like, just so that you can kind of have an idea as to what everything, what we're experiencing here at Rafael Hernandez. Next slide, please. So the teachers, as a math coach, we meet weekly to discuss what we're doing in the classrooms. We're discussing resources. We're looking at our scope and sequence, and we're trying to really optimize our learning from bell to bell outside of our paper and our pencil, which is why we are doing our hands-on investigations. But obviously, moving towards with our 21st century learners, we really were looking for a platform that would not give us just multiple choice questions. So we were looking for park-like questions, if you will, that are tech enhanced, that are not classic questions like multiple choice and fill in the blank or true or false. We were looking for something other than just practicing with, the practice tests that they give you when they allow you to get onto these sites, if you will, before the major test occurs, we were looking for that type of practice with these tools daily. That was one of the first things we were looking for. We were also noticing that we really wanted to use our data as much as possible, but the life of a teacher, I'm sure most of you are, is very, very busy. We have we have a lot of time we have to use a lot of time of our day to go through our data, to group students accordingly, to create assessments, to create lessons. It's not an 8 to 3:30 job or whatever you will, whatever the case may be. It is a very, very time-consuming job. So we wanted our data to be available to us immediately almost, because what we're doing is we're waiting to the weekend, or we're waiting until we have a moment to correct something that was assigned maybe 2 or 3 days ago, or maybe yesterday or the day before. And the turnaround with the decisions that you have to make using that data, the turnaround can be not as effective as you could as if it were in the moment. So we were looking for timely data. We were looking for rigor, especially with the Common Core being new in a sense. It's challenging for some of our teachers, especially newer teachers to education, to choose appropriate resources, to choose even appropriate questions and tasks. So we wanted to look for a platform that will also provide us a library of questions and tasks that we feel are rigorous, and at least have a variety so that we can choose the rigorous questions. The PARC in New Jersey, we take the PARC exam, and we have type 1, type 2, and type 3 tasks. And the type 1 tasks are tasks that you see often on platforms with the multiple choice, and they're a little bit more closed-ended and don't provide much of a deeper thinking. But the type 2 and 3 tasks make up 40% of the test, and they're very, very rigorous tasks and questions that ask you to explain your reasoning. And Edulastic allows for you to create these types of questions where there's multiple parts so that they resemble PARC-like questions. So we're also looking for a platform that's user-friendly. Edulastic has a ton of there's a bank of videos of how to create questions, how to create the appropriate tasks, how to find the data, because there's so much data. Sometimes you're looking for specific data. There's also a chat where somebody pops up. So it was really, for me, important to know that if our teachers needed support beyond me, that they would be able to get that in the Edulastic platform. So we went with Edulastic, which was, something that we use daily. So moving on, we have the next slide, please. Thanks. So before we implemented Edulastic, students would solve most often with pencil and paper. They used other websites that would give you multiple choice, and you'd have to wait for everyone to finish the question, the exam rather, for you to get the data. Most times we found that students were not skilled in using the computer with the way the PARC presents questions. So, for example, some of our students weren't even able to answer some of the PARC questions last year because they were unfamiliar or maybe didn't have as much practice. Not many students, but many questions were skipped overall. So skipping those questions can mean moving a proficiency band or obviously points. So when students are skipping questions due to the complexity of the actual manipulation of the task, if you will, that's a disservice to all of the hard work that we've put in. So we want students to be prepared with the content and own the content, but we also want them to be fluent and prepared in using a computer and using these tech-enhanced questions and being able to manipulate them. Students were frustrated with the PARC, and that was obviously something that we wanted them to go in prepared and feeling very confident that they can at least know how to solve. Forget about the content, that they at least have the tools to solve for the problem. So after we started implementing Edulastic, questions like check all that apply are not so scary anymore. Questions such as drag and drop, classify, shade in fractions of your pie chart, all of these types of questions are not foreign anymore. They know the questions. they apply the content, and it's a great marriage. Next slide, please. So we do formative assessments at Rafael Hernandez with our entrance tickets, our exit tickets. We have our do nows, journal entries. Our journal entries are specific to for our mathematical practices 3 and 6, which is constructing a viable argument and critiquing the reasoning of others. So with our journal entries, we're able to correct other students' work as well as reflect on our own work and justify our reasoning. And that lends itself to the type 2 and 3 tasks that PARC presents on their exam, on their assessment. So we also have peer feedback. Students, as I said before, they will correct each other's work. They will comment on each other's journals. And we do something that I'll get into later on called aggressive monitoring. In order to really get a sense of students thinking in the now, and I'll get to this later, is we have deep, rich academic discourse about the math, about the literacy, about the content. And from those discussions or from the observation of students, from observing student work and watching them in the process, we aggressively monitor through anecdotal notes. And I'll talk about that later. Next slide, please. So this is just a picture I took the other day of our students in their do now, and if you see in the background, their do now was a Scholastic Assignment 8EE A1. Next slide. Figured I'd put a slide up. Yeah. So that was actually that's them in the moment. So I screenshot a couple of questions from a specific do now that I took from the 8th grade, or the 7th grade rather, excuse me. And although most of these are closed-ended and I didn't want to show you the tech enhanced because I'm sure you're familiar with that, or if you're not, that would be a different day. But these are just 5 questions that you might see on a do now, so a teacher will come in, they'll put a do now up on the board, and they'll have 5 questions. The students will, maybe have 10 minutes. It depends on the rigor, of course, and the purpose of the do now. And within moments of the very first question being asked, the data starts to come in. So let's take a look at the next slide. So we're looking at real-time data. So that class just took a do now, for example, and there were 5 questions, and this is their data. So if you look at the data overall, there's a lot going on here, and I actually only screenshot the top half. I'm sure most of you understand what I'm talking about. The top data graph, stack bar graph rather, talks about a couple of things. The blue line that goes through the bars, the stacked bar, talks about the average time on task. So what this is telling me as a teacher and is that question 1 was possibly the most challenging, or maybe it just took them a long time. I mean, this is the thing. We have to kind of we make inferences. We really don't know because no one's telling us, or we're not watching it with our own eyes, but we're using the data to analyze it. So I will say a few things that, I'll give a couple of different ideas because we're not exactly sure. It may have been that they, it took them more time after they opened it up because they had to get a pencil out. We're not sure. But it looks like question 1 may have given them the most challenge. And then it looks like question 2, within seconds, the students got it, which is great information for me. And then, and you can see that question 3, the students didn't spend that much time on it, and they got it wrong, and so on and so forth. And then the overall performance by the standard was somewhere, almost 30% overall. Next slide, please. So what that means is that if you really want to look at data closely, you have to always refer back. You can't look at data overall without dissecting the question. So when I saw Q2 and students, most students understanding it, I wanted to know what that question looked like. So I actually copied and pasted Q2 and Q3, question 2 and 3, so that we're all looking at the same thing. So we're looking at the question, which is vocabulary. It's mathematical language. What is the base? It's an identification piece. So students, yes, they did get that right because it's almost vocabulary, if you will. It is vocabulary. It's mathematical language. So students are proficient in the mathematical language. But when it comes to the evaluation or the operational portion, which was question 3, it says that they're having issues with that. Now, if you don't look at these questions, you might think, oh, they kind of get it because they got number 2 right. Well, you don't know what number 2 looks like. And if you weren't purposeful about your questioning, then you're not going to get good data. So you have to be purposeful with your questioning. I might even say not to even include that because it's assessing something other. So you want to be very meaningful and purposeful when you're assigning and when you're looking at the data. Next slide, please. So I pose this question. This is what I would say to our teachers. If this were your do now data, would you move on to new content? And it might be yes if your goal, it depends on your goal. If your goal was, yes, I'd like to see if they know the language, then you probably could move on. But if you're looking for the students to solve operationally, you would most likely want to address and revisit a lot of these standards. So, I mean, this standard in different contexts or within a new chapter or a different idea. So you would want to address that. And you may want to address that right then and there in that class period. And that's what I'm talking today about. Next slide, please. So when teachers, as I said before, teachers must be purposeful when they're choosing their questions. So as I said before, a student scored very highly on the identification, but low on the operational. So this means a few things. You could either revisit the standard for the entire class. You can look at individual data and pull students to a teacher-led station that you are a part of so you can work more closely. You can peer group students, the ones that are performing. There were a bunch, there was a small group, but a group of students who did well on this. They could possibly be the team leaders if you want to continue with this type of work for that day. You can create another assessment because these are easy to make. You can make another one for an exit ticket while you're working within a small group. But all of this data informs how you're going to group your students for the stations, as I was talking about, and that's why I showed you our math block. In the latter portion of the class, students are now getting into groups, and I can use that data immediately to say, student A belongs in this group, or student B should sit with me, or student C and D can work together, or C can be a lead of another group. And once you start to do this more often, this is something that our teachers almost rely on. I don't want to say that because, you know, we're teachers, we can do anything. But we really look towards this data as a springboard into your lesson, or to really look ahead, because our teachers are asked weekly to provide us stations. So they're very, very purposefully planning for their stations. They know exactly what's going to go at each station. They describe the task and the standard and the groupings of students that will be there. So this data is very, very important. As a coach, as a teacher, and for the administration, I speak with the administration about, well, content is being taught, because I would gather from that last data that the question 2, which speaks to mathematical language and vocabulary, must have been taught, being that the vocabulary was, the students got that. And that's not something that they walked into class probably knowing from their previous years. So that's also informing that some is being taught, but on a lower level. So we really need to increase the rigor. It would be telling me to increase the rigor and to group students according to that data. Next slide, please. So I see a question. I want to address a couple of questions. So how are you getting the real-time data? So the real-time data actually, if you go to your assigned assessment screen, and I don't want to go too far off because then I can do a different webinar on utilizing the platform, if you will. But the real-time data is when you go to your assignment screen and then you click on View Responses, you will get a screen that shows, see these colored boxes? That are all of your students underneath that first slide I showed you with the overall student performance, as well as the questions Q1 through 5 or whatever the case may be. So all of that data is, if you look at View Responses, there's a couple other places you can see it too. It's dynamic and it continues to change. So, and if a student is on a question, all of the boxes start gray. I'll get into that later because they haven't taken those questions yet. But if a student's on a specific question, it'll go dark gray. So for a teacher, if I see a dark gray box for a long time, other than even looking at the time on task, that's telling me that maybe a student isn't even paying attention to the question. Maybe I need to go over to that student and say, hey, is everything okay? Are you feeling okay? So every single piece of data that I view on Edulastic for me has been, every single piece has been meaningful and purposeful. So you can get that on that screen. And then, do the students like being grouped? The students really like being grouped. From my personal experience, and I've been working with groups almost for my entire educational career. Students like to be in small groups. It actually takes a little bit of anxiety out, especially in your adolescence. It's challenging to raise your hand and speak up, or to even ask a question in front of a classroom. So they really like that. It also gives you a chance to kind of just get to know the students on a little bit more of a personal level. I actually think it's very nice to be in smaller groups, because I think it really just changes the dynamic. And students, I think, are more confident when they're in front of a few rather than the whole. So I find some of my greatest growth occur during those stations. We didn't have those stations at one point, and we moved into that maybe around fall. We moved towards stations, and we really had, our data shows growth in all grades from beginning of the year to now in all grades. So we're showing some great growth with that. So. And they know that's a great question. They know which groups they're in because we post them, and then when we make those changes on the fly, so we'll call it like, the Mets, the Knicks, whatever the teams are called, and then you'll say, hey, you're with the Knicks today. And because they are changed so often, they really aren't even aware as to what they mean. Because usually, you get put in a group in the beginning of the year, you stay there the entire year, you know that you're in a certain group for a certain reason. And this is allowed for us to, to really change when the students change. Some students are great in geometry, but not so much in the number sense. And we have to address the needs of all so that we're serving all of our students, regardless of their strengths and their weaknesses. So that's why it's important to use the real-time data, because our students, just because they were strong on maybe a diagnostic, doesn't mean that they're going to get everything all the time. So I just want to address those questions. Great. So this is what I was speaking about before, how we use the colored boxes to inform. So this is just student 1, student 2, and student 3. This is their data. So go to the next slide, please. All right. So I've changed their names, obviously, to student 1, 2, and 3, but this is real data. And the green boxes, so it says the performance. Let me start with that. 17 out of 32.5 points. And then it gives the percentage. The teacher did not have to figure that out. Edulastic did it for them. And now we're going to take a look at the responses. So each box represents a question. So let's go to student 1. The green boxes mean that the student has answered it and completed it, and is correct. The red boxes demonstrate that the student was incorrect. Now, the blue boxes are all short constructed or open-ended questions, meaning the questions that are red and green are able to be scored by Edulastic, so you can get that right away. The blue ones, as a teacher, you have to go back in and grade them and then release the grade so that it changes for that. So it will give you the percentage until you score that yourself. So oftentimes you have the choice to release the grades right away, or you can release it later. With the do nows, I usually release it right away because you want the students, and we'll talk about it later, but you want the students to be a part, you want them to own their own data. Teachers can talk about the student's data, but can they? If a student asks you what they're getting on their report card, it should be shocking because we want them to own their data. We want them to know where they are, and it should be a team effort. Where are we, rather? So that's very, very important to either release or not release. So I usually release for when we're doing smaller assessments, but for the larger ones, this was a little bit of a larger, higher stakes. You can release it later after you scored them. So let's go to the next slide. So I said the blue boxes are open-ended, but I wanted to say during this slide that the gray boxes, as I said before, they actually mean all of these boxes start gray to begin with. And as a student responds, the color changes. So the gray box actually means that student 2 did not attempt or did not even solve, may have attempted, I can't say that, but did not solve or even try. Yeah, I guess, because you could say attempt.
That's right. If it's gray, they didn't submit any answer for it.
Yeah, because, I don't want to say that they and try, because we'll see later actually some even more interesting data that I love. And thank you, Leslie, for always jumping in. I appreciate that. But the gray means that student 2 just did not attempt that. And the funny thing is, as I said before, green and red mean that it's a closed-ended question, that Edge Elastic can correct A, B, C, D, check all that applies, those types of questions. Now, if you look at the very last box on the right, the red one for student 1, do you see that, Leslie, right there?
Yes, this one here.
Believe it or not, and I don't know if this was purposeful, but I chose this test because the teacher actually had this 6 open-ended, but that last one, as you can tell by its color, is not open-ended. It was, believe it or not, it was a true or false question. I'm not sure how it hopped over there, and I just discovered this when I was putting this together. But had student 2 maybe, I could maybe make a guess that student 2 may not even have looked at all of the questions because the last box wasn't attempted either. And it was a true or false, which means you have a 50% chance of getting it right. So I think that, so what I wrote was that student 1 looks, and I'm saying this, looks from the data, we don't know, that the student functions well independently. And what that means is that when a student functions well independently, they then can be a group leader. So there's only one of us, maybe if you're lucky you have two adults in the room. So excuse me, I'm so sorry about these.
That's okay. Cool. What happens when you're in school?
Right, everybody knows what's going on right now. I'm happy. I'm happy about that. We're in good company. So thank you. So I wrote that student 1 functions well, so they might be a leader, a group leader. You might want to actually push them to something more rigorous. You might want to have them create a test or give them an answer and have them create questions for some type of a number sentence or whatever you'd like. Student 2 seems to obviously have seems to struggle because there is quite a bit of red, and that yellow means that it's partially correct. So it may have been a check all that apply or a multiple part question. Student 2 seems to struggle, but the thing that is glaringly obvious to me is that we need to work with student 2 more regarding open-ended questions and short constructive responses. And then student 3 doesn't seem is attempting, and we're looking for all blue. We don't want to see any gray. We do not want to see any gray, even if it means that they put just an opening sentence. We want everyone to attempt everything because we know they can do it, and we need them to know that too. So student 3 does probably struggle with content, and it has a lot of red. But then you have to dive deeply into what they wrote for the open-ended. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what I was talking about before regarding these gray boxes.
Family, all basketball girls report to the check, please. All basketball girls report to the check. Thank you.
So this is what you're looking at right now is questions 11 to 17, which were the same questions from the previous 3. So we're looking at just student 2, time on task. So you can look, and one of the first slides of this presentation, it had all of the time on task that we spoke about. But this is the time on task for this one particular student 2 that we were speaking about before, who skipped a lot of open-ended questions. So if you're looking at 11, yes, it looks as if the student took a little bit less than 2 minutes, because if you're looking at the right, it says time in seconds. And it says that, there it is. So you're looking at a little under 2 minutes for question 11. Now, it looks like if you're me, you're looking at question 12. You know it's been answered, and you're looking at the blue dot way above that, but it's not been attempted. So what that, and just so you know, the height of the bars represent the amount of points. So that's a 1 point. 12 is a 1 point, 13 is a 1 point, and it looks like 14 could be 3.5 points. It looks like, yeah.
These look like maybe they were harder questions.
Correct. Yes. So if you're looking at the blue line, if you will, you can actually see now how many seconds that student took on these open-ended questions. So it looks like they made an attempt. They put in some good effort for 12, skipped it, and then 13 through 17 looks like there are actually 0 time in seconds. So I could make a prediction that this student needs assistance in persevering through these types of problems, and we need to maybe give them a head start, like pushing a student on a bike to ride a bike. These open-ended questions are extremely rigorous, and it is up to us to give them students the tools to really take off with answering these open-ended questions. So what I want to go back to the data. Average time spent on each question, not at all. And then most open-ended were skipped. And it doesn't even, you need some type of seconds to even review. So I would really gather that this student may not have even read some of these questions, if not, all from 3 to 17. So next slide, please. So what does this mean? I wanted to talk a little bit about what I would do specifically for that open-ended student. I would definitely give that student some sentence starters, and we're going to get into that a little bit as well. So the open-ended piece needs to be addressed through the journaling, through open-ended questions and the like. We're going to get into that in a little bit, but there is a way to prepare our students for open-ended, other than just continuing to give them more tasks. So using real-time data, it engages students in data cycles of assessments that result in adjustments to their test-taking strategy. So we're trying to ask students to become a part of this process. We're engaging students. They are taking these assessments. They're looking at the data, and we're adjusting how they take the test. So one test-taking strategy, which I was speaking of right now, just earlier, is that we have sentence starters. We can give, use acronyms that they do in literacy, like RACE, restate the problem, answer the question. You're able to give tools to these students so that they know. Now, students might say, that student may not even have realized that they were lacking perseverance. But it's up to us to have those conversations. It's amazing how many times you have a conversation with someone or a student and you think that they get it. But so it's our job as teachers in the profession to explain what this stuff means. It's as obvious as it is to us, sometimes it's not. So we're going to create data, we're going to create goals based on this data, and we're going to make sure it's timely. By the end of the week, our students today just put up their SMART goals for Park, and they said, this is how many points I want to grow, and I'm going to do if I do, and they're creating SMART goals, and we're going to talk about that, I think, in the next slide. We're using real-time data to alter groups. Some of our older students will come up to the teacher and say, you know what, Mr. G, I actually think I'm going to sit with this group because I know what's going on. The stations are labeled. The instructions are there. They know what they're going to do when they get there. So if they know that they need help in a certain area, they will by themselves, of their own volition, say, you know what, this is where I need to be. I saw my data. Please give me more help in this and the like. And that's how releasing the data on right away will really help students become more aware. Oh, so they don't have to ask you questions about how they're doing. They know how they're doing because they took the test, they saw it, and then they're going to say to you or say as a team, what are we going to do so that I can see growth within the next week, by the end of the chapter, whatever the goal is. So the real-time data will also help to inform the small group instruction. Do you want to move on? Sometimes this data tells you that you're ready to move on. And as I have here, the sentence starters they provide students a head start for open-ended. So again, and some teachers who teach use the literacy acronym RACE even for the open-ended, just so they can give students a head start. You're going to restate the problem, you're going to answer it, then you're going to cite, because our students are being asked to explain their reasoning and justify their answers, and as they should be. And they always have been, but now we're really pushing them to really assess their thinking and revise their thinking, and that all comes with the mathematical discourse. So we're just trying to give tools for students to own the data, to make goals with specific action steps, such as I'm going to use a sentence starter, I'm going to incorporate this reading strategy when I'm in my small group, and I'm going to dissect the prompt or annotate, whatever the case. But there are strategies we can give them for them to create goals and meet them. Next slide, please. So moving on with continuing or piggybacking onto that, making students a part of the process. I put up a couple of just images here. We all, SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, rewarding, or reasonable, and time. I put up a couple of pictures of that, and we want to make sure that we're saying we're reasonable, but we're asking students to create SMART goals, and what we would do is we would project, or we would use all of our teachers have this in their room, something to this effect. And we're asking students to become a part of the process. So when they get their data, and it's not every single time, but in general, when they get their data, we give them a graphic organizer to help them create their next goal. So student two's goals, going back to that student who skipped that, they might make a goal, and they should be making a goal, to attempt and complete all open-ended questions, and I might add with a specific sentence starter, with something to that effect, because we want to include our students. It's their learning process, and we should be facilitating that, not owning it for them. So we want to make sure that they're a part of the data, and when they get real-time data, within 10 minutes, they take a test in 10 minutes, and within the moment they get their data, that's priceless. So we want to include students in creating their own goals, and having real-time data allows for us to do that with the students in the moment. Next slide, please. So I was thinking about pros and cons. So we have a lot of pros. We have, just the tech-enhanced questions alone it's amazing. But when we want to look at student thinking, really, when you're looking at data such as this, most times you can't see student work. So we've committed to, before students take their Elastic assessment, similarly to how they've been answering questions for their, short or long educational lives, they must use pencil and paper first. So students, if you walk into a classroom and you don't see students with pencil and paper, you got to ask them what's going on, because most of this, if not all of this, is not able to be done in your head. So you want students to first make sure that they are solving on, because there's also the skill of just simply copying from a screen a prompt. You have to rewrite the problem. Did you copy it correctly? So you want to get those little skills that we often overlook as part of the process as well. We want to recreate these online assessments as authentically as possible. So we ask the students to write, the question down and answer it. And as students are working on the problem, we're looking at student work, and sometimes they're asking us questions, and we're making anecdotal notes. This is called aggressively monitoring students. So we're looking at the student work, and we're making notes. We're not interrupting their thinking, but we're making notes so that we can address misconceptions and student understanding of big ideas and enduring understanding. We really want to make sure that are students getting this right because they conceptually understand this, or are they looking at a pattern? We're not looking for procedures. We're not looking for concepts. We're looking for a deep understanding of concepts. And we're looking for, when we're aggressively monitoring, we're looking at what the pictorial representations are, what their procedures are, so that we can see what is going wrong. If a student's getting a question wrong, where are they having that error? Is it something that a lot of people are having? Is it something that this one particular student is having? Next slide, please. So as students are taking these Elastic assessments, teachers have created a form called, what we call our aggressive monitoring form, and essentially, this is a first grade unit 3, it's on shapes and patterns. There are three big ideas for the unit for geometry, and it's this. So if you can look at the unit of geometry for first grade, and it's an entire chapter 5, but really what's being assessed are these three big ideas. So this is only 4 students in the class, if you will, but imagine you having 25. So one of the big ideas is to identify and create shapes using defining attributes. So as a teacher, you're walking around and you're looking at student work, and you're seeing that one student might be naming a cube a square or confusing it, and you write these little notes down. Same thing on the other side when they're talking about a quarter. Are they confusing it with money? And if you start to see trends here, instead of waiting until your exit ticket, instead of waiting until the end of the day, perhaps the next day, for you to look at that student work, meaning if Dave and Joshua are working on something and they submit it to you, when are you going to really look at those answers and then furthermore that data? If you have the ability to aggressively monitor while they're doing their work in the moment, you can then address misconceptions before they continue, because we know it's very hard to unlearn something once you know it to be true. Next slide, please. So here's another, an additional aggressive monitoring. This is our an 8th grade one. So some of the ideas is similar size. This is kind of shorthand, if you will, but different transformations and the understanding of congruence. So similar size. If you look at students 2, 6, and 7, and then furthermore, I had to cut it off, but there were quite a few students who were writing angles as a side length. So what that means is that in the moment, that teacher is looking around, they're on Edge Elastic, they see this person did that, this person did that, this person did that. Let me stop right now, address the class, go to the front, and explain to students, or not even explain to them, have them tell each other, ask students, what's wrong with this? And you can actually take a student example and copy it and put it on the board and ask students, and that goes back to, you know, do you agree? Are you disagreeing? What do we think of this? We're critiquing the reasoning of others. Put it up on the board. What's wrong with this? And as a class, let's address this misconception so that we're writing angles as angles inside this side length. So now you don't have to wait till 2 days later, or you don't have to wait till the next day. You can do it in the moment. And that's something that our gains in our first few months in our data were not that much, weren't that great until we started to implement the Edge Elastic and couple it then with the aggressive monitoring. We're doing great with the Edge Elastic, but the growth, now that we've been aggressive monitoring as well, has been evident. So those two things together, I actually think will yield more growth as well. So next slide, please. So some people, I wanted to speak a little bit about like who's doing this, when is it happening, who's got time for this. So obviously the teacher, or maybe with the teacher's aide or a push-in if there's somebody there, our co-teacher, will look at the data in the moment. But what we also do with Edge Elastic data is, and we give Edge Elastic assessments on a daily basis. It's part of our station work. It's done every day. So our library is quite big in-house, and the library itself in general is huge anyway. So we look at all of the data during our professional learning communities and our grade level meetings. So our PLCs, they are from pre-K to 2, from 3 to 5, and from grades 6 to 8. So we're able to look vertically at the data so that we can look for trends, maybe with number sense, that they're having trouble in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and fractions. So we can really address some of these misconceptions, brainstorm high effective strategies, maybe take a look at some of the aggressive monitoring to see what trends we're seeing. So teachers then use that as well as their grade level meetings across disciplines, because we can look at writing tasks and just the completion percentage. Are your students completing? Are there a lot of gray boxes? So we're looking at the data vertically and horizontally at our grade level meetings so that we can really take all of the data for what it's worth, because there really is a ton of stuff to look at. So we're looking at how students are performing on our open-ended or our closed, or many students do not check all the boxes for check all that apply. It's still something that's foreign and we need to have them practice. How do students perform on interrelated standards across the grade level and within small groups? So at the PLCs, we also will then adjust our small groups as well based on that data, because our small groups in general are pretty solid, and they alter, weekly, bi-weekly, if you will. But the minor adjustments are made in the real-time data, possibly for that lesson. Students know that the following day they'll go back to their original grouping, and then if they're told, and sometimes they'll move themselves, as I said before. So it's all based on, the discretion of the teacher. But when we're at the PLCs and our grade level meetings, when we look at the data, we are able to then revisit our lesson plans and our, as I said before, our specific station plans. And the data informs how we want our stations to look. Are we going to give vocabulary or skill review, or in one station? Will we have an unpacking the prompt station? Should we have all 4 stations about open-ended? Should we have a teacher-led open-ended? All of these questions are able to be addressed within the data. What does your class need? And they tell you. They tell you when you look at their data. And the time on task is priceless, because that informs you about, even if they get something right and it takes them a lot of time, that's great, but if they get something wrong and they take a lot of time, that needs to be addressed too. You cannot be stuck on something, and we need to address what the issue is so that, or if you, what we said before with the gray boxes, you take a lot of time and then you don't even answer. I mean, you have to really teach perseverance and stamina. So those are some things that we look at when we're with our PLCs. It really informs what we're looking at ahead, and it shows growth, trends, gaps, etc. Next slide, please. So what's next for us is that we are hoping, and I'm sure everybody is hoping for this, but we're looking for more Chrome for our 1-to-1 ratio. We move towards our stations because we don't have 1-to-1 in our school. We actually split a computer cart for 2 classes. So we have 32 Chromes, I believe, and we split it between 2 classes. So there's about 16. Sometimes it's split among 4. So teachers don't often have a full classroom set. So we are, in a sense, forced to use the stations, to use the computers in stations, which I think is wonderful because you want to be interactive. You want to capitalize your ability to influence and grow students. So if you're in a classroom and they're all on their computers the entire time and you're not an active participant and a facilitator of learning, maybe that's not the best lesson. So I actually like the teacher-led because they can rotate and they rotate and they teach station for ELA at least twice a week and for math I think 3 times a week or 2 to 3 times a week. And they get to actually visit all the stations. They're not just going to be an open-ended. That person will experience everything, but the difference will be, will she be with you? Will she be with a teacher-led student? Will she need a group? Does she need one-on-one? Does she need tutoring? So that's another thing that we think about. So we're looking for a 1-to-1 ratio so we can have a full set so we have a little bit more flexibility. It would be great for every single station to be technology-led, especially now that we're assessing online. Our teachers we're creating more assessments to add to the library. There is a plethora of assessments in the library and questions, but we are actively working hard to even add to that as well. There are Elastic certified, I believe, tests online. There are people who have created amazing tests, Joe Joseph, Barbie Clifton. We have our New Jersey model curriculum now that's up recently as well. I think we New York to just name a few. And these are all tests that are rigorous, are aligned to the Common Core and are ready to go, if you will, if you just press the sign. So we're actually creating more assessments, especially for K-2, because there's not as much there, obviously, as that's not a testing, those aren't testing grade levels. We're looking at a little bit more PD, so similarly to you, learning about how you can use data more. Our teachers are also constantly, wanting to learn how they can use the data more. And Elastic is always updating itself. So we're, our professional development is, changes with that, but in a great way. They're always improving, making things easier, and sometimes we need a little bit of professional development, and it's user friendly. So we update with the data. When they change, we have to continue to stay in the know. And then we're working on academic tracking and synthesizing performance across content as well as parts and other interim assessment data, meaning we have something in-house for our district that we have these benchmark assessments from a company, and we have to then take a look at that data and cross-reference with our Elastic data, and then maybe cross-reference that with our cumulative data. We want to see where this data fits in our big picture, because we do assess in many ways and with different platforms, and we want to see how this data relates to other data so that we can get a clearer picture of student growth and success. So what we're looking at is a ton of data moving forward, and we are always looking to improve our student learning, but we really want to make sure that our data during class. So if I could get one thing, if I could drive one idea, my big idea home would be to look at the data in that moment and to make informed decisions with data in that moment, so that you don't waste any more time from bell to bell on anything that you don't have to. So this will tell you what to avoid, and this will inform you as where to head to. And if I can't stress it enough, instead of waiting to log on to the end of the day, put that Chromebook in your hand or go over to your desktop, look at the data, and make your decisions based on that. It's just another avenue of getting to know your students and their learning and their thoughts even more. So I think the next slide is questions and comments. Yep. And I was wondering if I missed any questions. No, I don't think I did. Did I miss any questions?
No, I think you got all the questions.
So I put my, those are my, that's how you can contact me, and I love feedback, questions, comments, anything. But are there any questions right now that anybody would like me to address? I'm sorry about the announcements, and I'm sorry for any distractions. It's a school, so we're very distracted. You kind of have to tell people, oh, I'm busy, stuff like that. So I apologize for any type of stalling on my behalf.
Yeah. No problem. So you can either ask a question in the chat window, or you can click the Ask a Question button at the top, and that's the question there. And I know it's getting late. We had some great questions while we were going.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. No, we're completely have enough time. It was amazing.
All right.
Thank you, Caitlin. It was terrific information.
Thank you so much. Awesome. I'm glad to help. And again, anytime I'm available if anybody has any questions or would like to speak further about this.
Okay. And I wanted to say that I will be sending out the recording to the webinar a little bit later. And so feel free if you come up with a question that you've been thinking to ask, feel free to send it. Let's see, can we see the full email address for Caitlin? Oh, yeah, sorry. Let me get this little thing out of the way. Hold on. See if that works. Yeah. Okay. So Caitlin's email address is cscanlon@mps.k12.nj. Whoops, sorry about that. Okay, thanks, Jennifer. And again, as I mentioned, I'll send out the webinar recording, and if you have other questions that you think of later, feel free to respond to the email. Send an email to Caitlin. Send an email to me, leslie.tyler@eduelastic.com. And we really appreciate everyone joining us today. And have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.